Salam Keluarga Malaysia. Hello and good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. I'm Mohana Priya and you're watching Updates at Noon. Making the headlines today, PM promises equal empowerment for Chinese and Indian Malaysians. Rural Development Ministry to mobilise Jakwa in flood aid. Yang di-Pertuan Agong Al-Sultan Abdullah Riayatuddin Al-Mustafa Billah Shah granted an audience to Singapore's President Halimah Yacob at the Intercontinental Park Lane Hotel, London, in United Kingdom yesterday. During the 45-minute audience, Al-Sultan Abdullah and Halimah discussed, among others, the strengthening of the long-standing special bilateral ties between Malaysia and Singapore. Comptroller of the Royal Household for Istana Negara, Datuk Sri Ahmad Fadil Samsudin, said His Majesty and Halimah also touched on the in-depth cooperation between Malaysia and Singapore, as well as the implementation of various cross-border travel schemes, such as the reciprocal green lane, vaccinated travel lane and periodical commuting arrangement. The King also expressed his appreciation to the Singapore government for the Prime Minister of Singapore's invitation to attend the Formula One Singapore Grand Prix 2022, which will last for 2 days starting 1st October. Al-Sultan Abdullah and Raja Permaisuri Agong Tunku Haja Aziza Aminah Maimunah Iskandaria are in London to attend Queen Elizabeth II's state funeral today. Prime Minister Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob provided assurances that the Indian community in the country will not be left behind in development. He said the government had approved various allocations and initiatives for the Indian community, including anti-poverty efforts, as well as for the social development, social economy and prosperity. Explaining further, the Premier said the initiatives also include 100 million ringgit under Malaysian Indian Transformation Unit Mitra for anti-poverty efforts and the social development of the community under the National Unity Ministry. He said this is in line with the Keluarga Malaysia's key philosophy of no one will be left behind.
Mengenai Mitra, saya setuju untuk diletakkan direct di bawah Perdana Menteri atau JPS. Dan saya juga bersetuju untuk menubuhkan Yayasan Mitra.
Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri also approved 2 million ringgit in allocation for Indian students from the hardcore poor group following the application made by MIC. In addition, the Cabinet has approved the establishment of a Cabinet Committee on Indian Community Socio-Economic Development that will be chaired by the Prime Minister. The Premier said the establishment of the committee proved that Indian community was an important aspect of Keluarga Malaysia and his administration. Prime Minister Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob has given the assurance that the government will not marginalise efforts to empower urban and rural Chinese communities in the tabling of the upcoming Budget 2023. He said the government will ensure that the budget is focused on the welfare and well-being of the people as a whole, adding that it will also take into consideration next year's challenges.
Dengan menekankan pembangunan yang inklusif serta selari dengan komitmen Malaysia terhadap agenda pembangunan mampan ataupun SDG 2030. Langkah ini bertujuan memastikan semua ahli keluarga Malaysia dapat menikmati manfaat daripada pencapaian pembangunan negara tanpa kompromi terhadap hak generasi akan datang.
Speaking in his speech during the closing of the 37th National Chinese Cultural Festival 2022 last night, he said the different cultures in the country should strengthen the relationship among the races and allow them to learn the philosophies of the cultures. He also said the government encourages the hosting of cultural programs involving various races. He further noted that the government always supports programs organized by government agencies to strengthen the unity of Keluarga Malaysia. At the same time, the Prime Minister said the government is implementing measures to make Malaysia a developed and cultured country through the National Cultural Policy, which was launched last year. He said the policy's role is to dignify and preserve the art, culture and heritage of Keluarga Malaysia. The Rural Development Ministry will be mobilising the Department of Orang Asli Development or JAKOA as well as Village Development and Security Committee JPKK to ensure that residents in rural areas would receive the aid needed if they are affected by floods. Minister Datuk Sri Madzir Khalid said both JAKOA and JPKK would play an important and effective role since they comprised of experienced local officials and leaders with an in-depth knowledge about their respective areas. He said this after launching the UMNO Veterans Movement Keluarga Ku Pengundi Bien in Kuala Nerang. The Malaysian Meteorological Department, Met Malaysia, had forecast that the 2022-2023 monsoon season would take place from November till March. It also predicted that heavy rain is expected in Kelantan, Terengganu and Pahang from November to December, while Johor, Sabah and Sarawak are expected to face the monsoon from December to January. The monsoon season normally occurs from September to November. A total of 8,330 neighbourhood watch areas or KRTs have been set up nationwide to empower local communities. National Unity Minister Datuk Halimah Mohamad Sadiq hoped they can help to promote unity while working together with various government agencies and non-governmental organisations based on the National Unity Action Plan 2021 to 2030.
Jadi saya harap mudah-mudahan bagi kawasan-kawasan KRT tidak akan bekerja dalam kelompok sendiri, tetapi memperkembangkan tanggungjawab KRT untuk mempromosi perpaduan, mempereratkan perhubungan silaturahim antara masyarakat dalam komuniti tersebut dan bekerjasama dengan semua badan-badan kerajaan, badan-badan bukan kerajaan dan lain-lain.
Datuk Halimah noted that Sabah has the highest number of KRT after Selangor, which stood at 1,069 KRTs. The younger generation needs to be more courageous and develop their personality while moving in accordance with the current changes in the world. Federal Territories Minister Datuk Sri Dr. Shahidan Kasim said this is because the group's participation and contribution are required in driving the foundation of the future national development.
Dalam pemerintahan sudah pasti ada kombinasi orang lama dan juga orang baru. Di zaman Rasulullah bila lantik Panglima Perang yang berumur 18 tahun, Osama bin Zaid, tetapi pasukan veterannya berada bersama-sama dalam menggerakkan peperangan tersebut. Jadi kombinasi orang lama dan juga belia harus menjadi kenyataan.
Datuk Sri Dr. Shahidan said this after handing over the Youth Awards at the Convention Hall of Ujana Kewangan, Labuan. A row of 12 shop houses, including a jewellery shop along Jalan Kampung Cina in Kuala Terengganu, was damaged in a fire last night. The owner of Kedai Emas Sri Cahaya, Muhammad Rizwan Muhammad Yassin, said he found out about the incident at 8:20 p.m. after being informed by his friend. Muhammad Rizwan said after getting to know that the shop was on fire, he rushed to the scene, but by that time, the fire was already raging and the firemen would not let him enter the premises. He said he was told that the fire had started from a cloth shop, which caused the fire to spread quickly to the adjacent shops. Meanwhile, Terengganu Fire and Rescue Department Deputy Director, Senior Fire Superintendent Muhammad Khairiri Matresat alias Arshad said the department received a call at 8:42 p.m, but a team had already reached the scene by then. This was because the fire station was only 800 meters away from the scene, and firemen had learnt about the incident from members of the public who had come directly to the station. He said a total of 60 personnel were involved in the operation, with 4 engines, 2 tankers and an emergency medical rescue services unit.
Kemerebakan sangat cepat berpunca daripada keadaan angin dan kita mengalami sedikit kesukaran untuk membuat pemadaman kerana terdapat pendawaian elektrik yang begitu banyak yang dibuat di sekitar bangunan-bangunan yang terbabit.
The fire was successfully controlled within 45 minutes, while the cause of the fire is still under investigation. No injuries or casualties were reported. Up next in our foreign segment, Biden arrives in London to pay final respects to late Queen. US President Joe Biden paid tribute to the late Queen Elizabeth II on the eve of a state funeral yesterday, appearing at her lying-in state in Westminster. The president arrived with his wife aboard the Beast, the limousine used by American presidents. Biden is among the scores of dignitaries and royals from across Europe, Asia, Africa and the Americas who will attend the funeral. Hundreds of thousands of people have descended on London to pay tribute to Britain's longest reigning monarch, who died on 8 September, aged 96. Biden earlier appeared on a balcony overlooking the Queen's coffin in the vast historic Westminster Hall, making a sign of the cross and briefly placing his hand on his heart in reverence. The US president was set to join King Charles and other leaders from around the globe for a reception on Sunday evening ahead of the grand state funeral. Biden was one of the 14 US presidents in office during the Queen's 70-year reign, of which Elizabeth met all except Lyndon Johnson, starting with Harry Truman in 1951 when she was still a princess. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida called for the highest level of vigilance needed against mudslides, flooding and overflowing rivers yesterday as Typhoon Nanmadol struck down on Japan's southernmost main island of Kyushu.
危険な場所には近づかず、少しでも危険を感じたら躊躇せず避難をするなど、早め早めに命を守る行動をとってください。また夜間の避難は大変危険です。明るいうちに高い場所や頑丈な建物など安全な場所に避難をしてください。
The Japan Meteorological Agency, JMA, warning of gales and high waves like never experienced before. According to Japan's national broadcaster NHK, Kagoshima and Miyazaki prefectures in the south of Ireland bore the brunt of yesterday's storm, which lashed some areas with over 400 millimeters of rain and winds of up to 183 kilometers per hour. Government ministers convened a meeting in Tokyo yesterday afternoon to coordinate the official response to the storm. Nanmadol is forecast to turn east and pass over Japan's main island of Honshu before moving out to sea by Wednesday. Meanwhile, the entire island of Puerto Rico was without power yesterday as Hurricane Fiona made landfall and threatened to cause catastrophic flooding before barreling toward the Dominican Republic. The center of the storm made landfall on the southwestern coast of Puerto Rico near Punta Tocon at 3:20 p.m. Eastern Time, with maximum sustained winds of about 140 kilometers per hour, clearing the threshold for a Category 1 hurricane. Landslides, blocked roads, fallen trees and power lines, as well as a collapsed bridge in the town of Utuado in the central mountainous region were among the destruction already levied by Fiona. Electricity was out across the island of of 3.3 million people, and Luma Energy, the operator of the island's grid, said restoring power fully could take several days. Puerto Rico's ports have been closed and flights out of the main airport cancelled. Torrential rains and mudslides were also forecast for the Dominican Republic as the storm progresses northwestward, with the Turks and Caicos Islands likely facing tropical storm conditions on Tuesday. President Joe Biden approved an emergency declaration for Puerto Rico yesterday, a move that authorizes the Federal Emergency Management Agency to coordinate disaster relief and provide emergency protective measures. At least 9 people were killed and 34 injured when a passenger bus fell off a 75-meter cliff on the Inter-American Highway in Costa Rica on Saturday night. Now, officials said heavy rains across the country caused a landslide on the Cambronero route in the west of the country, 70 kilometers from the capital, San Jose. Firefighters and the country's Red Cross reported at least 9 people did not have vital signs. Authorities were trying to find missing people, who the presidency said numbered at least 30. Rescue teams worked through Saturday night and during the early hours of yesterday to remove debris and look for victims. The statement added hundreds of families had to be evacuated due to the severe damage caused by the heavy rains. The bus covered a passenger route between San Jose and the province of Santa Cruz de Guanacaste in the northwest of the country. The Costa Rican National Meteorological Institute said on Twitter that intense rains are expected to continue in coastal areas. The Soyuz MS-22 spacecraft for the new International Space Station ISS crew was installed at the launch pad yesterday ahead of its upcoming launch at the Baikonur Cosmodrome scheduled for Wednesday. NASA and Russian space agency Roscosmos signed an agreement in July allowing Russian cosmonauts to fly on US-made spacecraft in exchange for American astronauts being able to ride on Russia's Soyuz spacecraft. The long-standing collaboration between the United States and Russia in operating the ISS appears to be on solid footing, even as tensions between the two countries escalated over the Ukraine crisis. The ISS itself was born in part from a foreign policy initiative to improve US-Russian relations following the collapse of the Soviet Union and end of Cold War rivalry that spurred the original US-Soviet space race. But US-Russian ties have frayed since Russia's 2014 annexation of the Crimea region from Ukraine, prompting Congress to ban new government contracts with US companies using Russian rocket engineers for national security launches after 2022. None of the sanctions levied by Washington in response to Russia's military incursions into eastern Ukraine this week were directed at Russia's space program. A new rail sea freight train route to Tibet opened on Saturday in Beibu Gulf Port, South China's Guangxi Zhuang Autonomous Region. Now, this indicates that the 15 provinces, autonomous regions and municipalities that signed the framework agreement for China's Western Land Sea Corridor in October 2019 have launched the rail sea freight trains. According to station master of Qinzhougang East Railway Station Huang Jiangnan, cargo on the freight train is expected to arrive at Lhasa West Railway Station in 12 to 14 days, then leave the country through Jirong Port by road and finally arrive in Nepal. The trip saves about 20 days compared with the traditional route of shipping by sea. Jirong Port, lying in the far west of Tibet, is an important channel connecting Tibet and Nepal. As tourism industry is booming in Tibet, there exists a strong demand for daily necessities. In addition, Tibet is a gateway for cargo to be exported to Nepal and other countries. Under the framework of jointly building the Belt and Road, the new Land Sea Corridor connects China and ASEAN countries through various modes of transportation, and the benefits will be shared by all countries. Launched in 2017, the Trade Corridor is a trade and logistics passage jointly built by provincial-level regions in Western China and ASEAN members. Still to come in sports, youngest ever Premier League player debuts in Arsenal win. Athletics became centre stage of the 20th Malaysia Games of Sukma yesterday with a dramatic finish by Johor's Muhammad Arshad Mat Saad to win the men's 200 metres gold medal at the National Stadium in Bukit Jalil, Kuala Lumpur. Running in lane 4, he trailed behind national sprint champion Muhammad Azim Muhammad Fahmi of Perak in the next lane for most of the race. But he had enough in him to stage a last-minute surge to overtake his more famous rivals in the last 10 metres and cross the finish line with the fastest time of 21.02 seconds. Muhammad Azim took the silver with 21.03 seconds, while the bronze went to Negeri Sembilan's Muhammad Haikal Hanafi with 21.18 seconds. The victory was especially sweet for Muhammad Arshad, as he had been bested by national 100-metre record holder Muhammad Azim in the 100-metre finals last Friday and had to be satisfied with a silver medal as consolation. Meanwhile, the last day of athletics at the National Stadium also witnessed Selangor's Nur Afrina Batrisha Muhammad Rizal taking home the women's 200-metre gold after being the fastest with a time of 24.83 seconds, beating Nur Aisha Rofina Aling of Sabah, who clocked 25.14 seconds, and K. Darshini from Pahang with 25.74 seconds.
Dan gangsa untuk
Meanwhile, national shooter V. Shavina May took gold in the women's 10 metres air rifle, further fueling her ambition to win a medal on the international stage, especially at the Olympic Games. The 20-year-old Pulau Pinang shooter took the gold medal with 243.7 points, while silver went to Nur Izazi Rosli of the Federal Territories with 243.5 points and bronze to Nurul Atira Huzaimi of Perak with 219.2 points.
So far, between all of us, finally hari ni fight is a good fight lah. Macam persaingan agak kuat. So, I just wish for all the best. Everybody pun performance okay. Saya rasa sangat gembira lah dan bersyukur sebab dapat this kejayaan. And saya nak berterima kasih kepada MSN PP, MSN, my coaches and teammates and family yang support saya.
Shavina said she is now ready to blaze her way to earning a ticket for the 2024 Paris Olympics. 15-year-old Ethan Waneri became the youngest player in Premier League history when he came on as a substitute for Arsenal as they returned to the top of the Premier League with a comfortable 3-0 win at Brentford yesterday. Goals from William Saliba and Gabriel Jesus gave Mikel Arteta's side a 2-0 lead at the break before Fabio Vieira completed the win in the 54th minute. Waneri, who is 15 years and 181 days old, came on as a substitute for Vieira in the second minute of stoppage time, the first player under 16 to play in the competition. Arsenal never looked in danger, controlling the game from the outset. Saliba got things underway, hitting the visitors in front in the 17th minute, rising to angle a corner from Bukayo Saka in off the far post. Another header 11 minutes later doubled Arsenal's advantage with Granit Xhaka picking out Gabriel Jesus with a perfectly floated cross from the left, which the Brazilian met powerfully. The game was put beyond Brentford in the 4th minute after the break, thanks to a wonderful strike from outside the box by Portuguese midfielder Fabio Vieira. Arsenal are on 18 points from the opening 7 matches of the season, with defending champions Manchester City a point behind and North London rivals to Tottenham Hotspur also on 17 points. Matteo Guendouzi went from villain to hero as Olympique de Marseille drew 1-1 at home against Stade Rennais in Ligue 1 yesterday. The midfielder scored both goals, but the opener was into his own net. Marseille moved provisionally top of that, left them unbeaten this season, but without a win at La Beaujoire in their last night. Guendouzi deflected Hamari Traore's cross into his own net. The France international, however, made up for his mistakes 7 minutes into the second half Meanwhile, Lionel Messi's early goal earned Paris Saint-Germain a 1-0 win at Olympique Lyonnais yesterday as they opened a 2-point lead at the top of League One. It was a dream start for PSG, who went ahead from their first opportunity with Messi beating Anthony Lopez from just inside the area after collecting Neymar's pass. Messi Enea Bastianini overtook Francesco Bagnaia on the last lap for a dramatic Aragon Grand Prix victory yesterday as World Championship leader Fabio Quartararo crashed out in the first lap, blowing the title race wide open. Gresnini Racing's Bastianini avenged his narrow defeat at Misano earlier this month by denying Bagnaia a fifth straight win after a photo finish in Alcariz, fighting off the Ducati rider to win by 0.042 seconds. Bagnaia cut Frenchman Quartararo's championship lead from 30 points to 10 with 5 races remaining, with Alex Espargaro a further 7 points behind and back in the title hunt after completing the podium for Aprilia. Espargaro passed Red Bull's KTM's Brad Binder, who had spent most of the race in third after overtaking Ducati's Jack Miller in the penultimate lap to take his first podium place since Mugello in May. Reigning champion Quartararo hit the rear of Marc Marquez's Honda in the exit of Turn 5 before the Spaniard and LCR Honda's Takaki Nagami made contact, bringing the race to a premature end for all 3 riders. Bastianini's victory secured Ducati the Constructors' Championship for the 3rd consecutive season. With 5 Grand Prix left this season, MotoGP next heads to Japan for the Grand Prix on 25th September. And that concludes today's updates at noon. In our top story today, PM promises equal empowerment for Chinese and Indian Malaysians. Don't forget to tune in to News at 10 later tonight. Till then, I'm Mohana Priya. Thank you for your company.